You mentioned the choice between good and bad and how some choices can lead to suffering. Yeah. And I was wondering, in a world with so much pain and suffering, why does God not stop evil from happening?
That's a very, very good question too, Ricardo. So, Asclepius, the Greek philosopher, was saying what I'm going to share now, almost like 300 BC. Oh. And I believe John Decay said the same thing after. That's basically, I want to paraphrase what you said. If God willing to prevent evil, but he's not able, then he's not capable. And if God is able, but not willing to prevent that evil, then he's not a good God. But if God is able and willing to prevent the evil, so why we have all this kind of evil that we're seeing in the world, right? Before I go back to the answer in more details, we have to differentiate between two evils, moral evils and natural evils. The moral evil when people harm or cause harm between each other. So we blame the person. If you have a partner and that partner caused some harm to you, betrayed you somehow, or stole, or did something that you suffered because of his decision, then we blame each other because of the evil that caused by human beings. That's moral evil. But natural evil, all these kind of floodings and earthquakes and all what we see in nature, then we blame God. Because if we say that he's the creator of the universe, then who to blame? We're going to blame God. When it happens between human beings, we're going to blame the human beings. But when it happens between like in the nature, then we're going to blame God. So in both, we want to go back to the original story. From day one, when God created the mankind, man and woman, he created them on his image and he gave them that free choice. It has nothing to do with God. God is capable and God is willing 100%. But at the end, it's our free choices that make that decision to create that kind of pain and suffering. Look at the world. Look at what's happening. All these wars happening at this time. Why we have so much wars? Why we have that kind of... Because I want that resource. I want that money. I want the three main things now that causing evil and suffering and pain: sex, power, and money. Look at the source of everything around us in the world now. Is because I want maybe sex, maybe power, maybe more money. And because of my own free choice and my bad desires in these, then I decide I'm going to take what you have. I'm going to, by force or wars or all this kind of problems. And that's from Genesis 1, the very first chapter in Genesis, the first book, in verse 26 and 27. We read when God created the mankind. Genesis 1, verse 26 and 27, then God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. From the very basic idea, from the very origin of it, God created us with that kind of freedom to choose. And I want to say something here. It might sound long, but I want to read it as is, because it's really going to be encouraging for people might suffer, because we get that question, okay, why I'm suffering from that pain? I understand that God gave that freedom of choice to his creatures, but I'm suffering. I'm the result of someone else's decision to cause harm to me, and I'm the one who's suffering. So how is that just, right? I want you to read with me, open your Bibles in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 5, verse 21 to 42. As I said, it's long, but I want to read it as is, because really it's going to be encouraging to anybody going to watch this and you're suffering somehow and you're passing through hard times. Listen to this, what I call the 12 and the 12. And I'm going to explain what does that mean. In Mark chapter 5, verse 21 to 42, Jesus got into the boat again and went back to the other side of the lake, where a large crowd gathered around him on the shore. Then a leader of the local synagogue, whose name was Jairus, arrived. When he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet, pleading fervently with him. My little daughter is dying, he said. Focus on that. My little daughter is dying, he said. Please come and lay your hands on her, heal her, so she can live. Jesus went with him, and all the people followed, crowding around him. A woman in the crowd had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding. She had suffered a great deal from many doctors, and over the years, she had spent everything she had to pay them. But she had gotten no better. In fact, she had gotten worse. She had heard about Jesus, so she came behind him through the crowd and touched his robe. For she thought to herself, if I can touch his robe, if I can just touch his robe, I'll be healed. Immediately, the bleeding stopped. And she could feel in her body that she had been healed for her terrible condition. Jesus realized at once that healing power had gone out from him, so he turned around in the crowd and asked, who touched my... He went on a conversation with that lady. And in a few verses at the very beginning when we read, he knew about that girl that almost dying. But basically, he kept talking with the lady that has been sick for 12 years. Who touched my robe? His disciples said to him, look at this crowd pressing around you. How can you ask who touched me? But he kept on looking around to see who had done it. Then the frightened woman, trembling at the realization of what had happened to her, came and fell to her knees in front of him and told him what she had done. And he said to her, daughter, again, conversation, back and forth, back and forth. Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. Your suffering is over. Now look at this. While he was still speaking to her, messengers arrived from the home of Jairus, the leader of the synagogue. They told him, your daughter is dead. This is kind of like too late now. There's no use troubling the teacher now. But Jesus overheard them and said to Jairus, don't be afraid, just have faith. Then Jesus stopped the crowd and wouldn't let anyone go with him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the home of the synagogue leader, Jesus saw much commotion and weeping and wailing. He went inside and asked, why all this commotion and weeping? The child isn't dead. She's only asleep. The crowd laughed at him, but he made them all leave, and he took the girl's father and mother and his 3 disciples into the room where the girl was lying. Holding her hand, he said to her, Talitha kum, which means little girl, get up. That's in Aramaic. And the girl, who was 12 years old, immediately stood up and walked around. They were overwhelmed and totally amazed. This is what I call the 12 and the 12. There was a lady that was sick for 12 years, bleeding. And there was a girl, 12 years old, dying. If I read that story at the very beginning when we started, and I read about when they came to him at 12 years old is dying, I would leave everything, and there's an emergency here. There is urgency for me to leave everything and I go heal that girl that she's 12 years old, and then I will go back maybe to heal that lady that was sick for 12 years, because she had been sick for almost 12 years. It wouldn't matter much if I wait like an hour or two, or even he can see her the following day. That's the logic of the story, correct? But kind of, he was late. In my opinion, when I read that story, that wasn't correct. The logic behind the sequence of events, you have to leave that, go first there, then you continue with the lady that has been sick. My point is, all the people who are suffering or in pain somehow, a cancer result came and you don't know what to do. You have been praying for a long time, or you prayed for someone to get healed from that cancer. That person got healed, but when we prayed for that person, didn't get healed. The people who laid off from their work, or they are anxious to be laid from their work, maybe it will happen. I don't know how to feed my kids. Many people going through a very hard time. That story, it tells me that yet we don't understand why God does that before this, or make that decision before that decision. But it tells me for sure, even if I don't know the answer, why he allowed that suffering and pain in my life. It's for sure because it's not because he doesn't care. It's not because he doesn't love me. It's just his order and his wisdom is different than my thinking. And by the way, at the end, he healed them both. The girl and the lady. So I want to encourage everyone who's listening and you're passing through a hard time, just keep pressing on, keep praying, have God in the picture. This is not the time to go out or let him out from the picture. This is the time that you stick with him, Because he's the only way for getting out from the situation. I want to end also that answer with something I just remembered now. You know the Psalms chapter 23, the most famous one, Psalms 23.
Yep.
I want to read this, just the first verse of that Psalms 23. Okay, the most famous chapter that most probably the majority of us memorized since the childhood. Psalms 23, and the first verse, the Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing, correct?
Yeah.
But do you know what's the chapter before that? Just one chapter before. And that's David. Same guy.
My God, why have you forsaken me?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The first verse of just one chapter before. My God, why have you forsaken me?
Yeah.
God doesn't expect me to cancel my feelings and cancel my mind when I really pass through hard times and I say, everything is good. He's the Lord. Praise the Lord. He's my shepherd. I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. No. I go as is with my feelings and with my pain and with my sufferings, and I just stick with him. And in his own timing, he will act. And three things about the shadow. The shadow seems bigger than it should be, but it's just a shadow. And the shadow doesn't hurt. If you have a truck on the highway and you have a small car you're driving and you go past in the shadow of that big truck, nothing will happen to you because it's just a shadow. And the shadow is actually the evidence that there's light. Correct?
Yeah.
So maybe it's a shadow time now that you're passing through, but it's just a shadow. And actually, it's a good thing that we have that shadow. So it's the proof that really he exists and he can get me out of the trouble.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.